sure enough, gave him my number. And then one day I'm outside. I think I'm playing catch with my nephew and playing football on the street. My mom's like, I still lived at home, for Christ's sake.
Right, yeah.
And my mom goes, Mark, Ronnie Hawkins is on the phone for you. I'm like, what?
Oh, my God.
So I get on the phone, and he's like, yeah, we're thinking of doing a tour with a bunch of different acts, and we'd like your band to be part of it.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. I am Cody Deaner, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer. I am a professional speaker. I'm also a professional dad. Why? Because I got 4 kids. Being a dad's hard. Imagine having 4. Hey, I'm not complaining. I love it. And it's because I have an awesome tag team partner, because I'm also a husband to a beautiful, wonderful, understanding, amazing wife. And she's so understanding because I am coming to you today for another episode in my studio, recording this intro for my podcast, because I'm a podcaster now. I'm like 6 months in, guys. We're 6 months into this project. I don't think I can really call myself a true pro until I'm maybe like a year in, but I guess officially a professional, someone that gets paid for what they're doing, and I'm getting paid for what I'm doing from a couple of things. Number one is my wicked awesome sponsor, Rest When Dead Clothing. Go check them out on restwhendead.ca, or on Instagram at restwhendeadclothing. If you're watching this on YouTube at Cody Deaner Podcast, you can see a couple of the t-shirts in the background, the hat on my head, all available at restwhendead.ca, as well as signature series shirts from TNA, Stars, Crazy Steve, and Jody Threat. Go check that out at restwhendead.ca. The other way I'm making money is from my dedicated patrons over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Over there, you get each and every episode early and ad-free, not split into part 1 and 2, but the full conversation, no intros, no outros, no ads, just the raw, unedited conversation. You can watch that on video or download it and listen to it on audio over on patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Another thing I'm offering over on my Patreon now is I got a store. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to give every single month, that is not in your wallet right now to be given and supporting this project every month, but there is one particular episode that you want to get early, or one episode that you really want to have the full conversation of, I'm putting them up in my store, both video and audio format. So you can go to patreon.com/Cody Deaner and buy one of the full episodes right now to have that in your data bank, on your phone, on your computer, forever, unedited, commercial-free, raw footage of some amazing guests. Go check out all the past guests in the archives over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Other ways you can support is by going to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner. I have a Wrestling is Life is Wrestling shirt up there now. Get a cameo from me for you or family member at cameo.com/Cody Deaner. Are you a promoter or a wrestler who wants to work with me? I have so many promoters that have been messaging me, letting me know that, hey man, I'm totally digging your podcast. Are you available this date? And I'm having to actually say to so many promoters right now, no, I'm not available right now, unfortunately, because my schedule is booked. But maybe that I do have a date you're running a show on a date that I am available. I still got open dates, and I'm taking them throughout this year. I love doing independent wrestling. Even though I am a TNA wrestler, I'm taking independent wrestling bookings. So you want to book me on your show and for me to spread my love of professional wrestling with your roster and with your fans, then hey, let's do that. Hit me up at bookcody@codydeaner.com. That's bookcody@codydeaner.com. Or maybe you're someone who is a teacher or know a teacher or are affiliated with the education system somewhere in your area, and you've been hearing me say each and every time I do this podcast that I'm a professional speaker and I go into schools and I talk about it a lot in my conversations. And if you would like to inquire about, hey, maybe bringing me to your school or to your youth event to do a presentation, to do some of my programs, hit me up. Just head on over to chrisgrayspeaks.com. That's Gray with an A, chrisgrayspeaks.com. All of my speaking information is there, and you can learn about all of my programs and how you can bring me to your school or to your event this year. It's 2024. Oh man, I can't believe we're even saying that. 2023 was kind of a whirlwind of a year, but such an awesome year for me. I feel so blessed, and it is the year that I decided to finally start doing a podcast. I had said for so many years that I wanted to do it. I didn't say it publicly, but I talked to friends about it, and I had all these excuses as to why I wasn't going to do it. I just decided I'm going to do it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I've had some amazing conversations with so many awesome people, some people that are really close to me and my friends, and then others that aren't like super close friends of mine, but are really close colleagues of mine that I get to work with in Impact Wrestling or in other areas of my life within the wrestling business. Today's guest is someone who I have known for almost a quarter of a century, and I'm laughing before I can even say that out loud because it seems so crazy. I've been in this wrestling business for like 24 years, and since my first time stepping foot in a wrestling ring on an independent show like 24 years ago, this guy, my guest today, was on that show, and he's got a couple years on me. He's almost 30 years in the wrestling business, and I'm so excited to introduce him to some of you, because some of you that have been listening to Wrestling is Life is Wrestling from day one, some of you jump on here because you are really interested in the guests that I have because they're an Impact Wrestling star, or you're just listening because you love to hear this beautiful, soothing voice that I have. I don't think that's anybody, but maybe there's one of you. But you've come to really like this concept that I have of speaking to wrestlers, people that are successful in the industry, and not, talking about their favorite matches and what happened last week on some program. No, we're talking about their life and the lessons that they've learned along the way. And every single person I've had on this show has a really cool story to tell. And today's guest, some of you might not be familiar with, because he is not an Impact or TNA wrestling star. But this guy has done a lot. He's a traveling journeyman who has been wrestling, like I said, for almost 30 years. And this isn't like one of these veterans that, wrestles for 4 or 5 years and then takes a sabbatical and takes 5 years off to go have kids and then comes back 5 years later. And then all of a sudden, 30 years later, they say, I've been in the wrestling business 30 years, but I've only had 30 matches. That's not this guy. I just talked to him the other day, again, after our conversation. And I was like, how actually long have you been in the wrestling business? Because we never really talked about that in our conversation. And he told me 28 and a half years, no breaks, never been injured, never took any time off. 28 and a half years in this crazy, wild professional wrestling industry. I'm talking about Tornado. If you are an Ontario indie wrestling fan that has been watching any independent wrestling Ontario for the last 30 years, then you are very familiar with Tornado, one of the most respected professional wrestlers in the area of Ontario that has ever existed, to my knowledge. Why? Well, you're going to see today in this conversation. He is so down to earth. He's so knowledgeable. He's so smart, and he loves professional wrestling, and he's got a story to tell. I mean, not only is this guy a 30-year vet in wrestling, he's also a professional wrestling promoter, an owner. He runs Rock Solid Wrestling. One of my favorite places to work over the last decade has been at Rock Solid Wrestling. If you're not familiar with Rock Solid Wrestling, go check them out right now. Jump on Google, just type in Rock Solid Wrestling. You can find their YouTube, you find their Instagram, you find their socials, and you can start to see clips, and you can start to see how awesome Rock Solid Wrestling is. It's like a throwback to the times that I used to love watching professional wrestling in the 80s. It's like old school wrestling done today in the modern era, like no one else is doing. It's freaking awesome. That's Tornado's company, Rock Solid Wrestling, and we have an awesome team. But this guy has done even cooler things than just be a wrestler and just be a promoter, even though the word just shouldn't be in front of that. Any of those, jobs. This guy was a professional musician. I'm just going to tell you that. And then we're going to let him tell you some of these stories today. This guy has a wild, wacky, insane story that I love because it's just like he had this thing he wanted to do. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. And he went and he did it. And it's crazy. As a teenager, this guy started to work with some of the biggest bands in Canada. I'm not going to give any more than that, other than just to tell you, you got to listen to this. Also, on top of that, he found himself all of a sudden being in movies. He's been in multiple movies, multiple television shows, been a stuntman in movies. Tornado has done it all. He's one of these guys that is just like, yeah, I will do that. And then he goes and he does it, and he does it awesomely. And then but he does it by working hard, but also being willing to put himself in situations that other people might not put himself in. He's such an amazing dude, and I'm really, really happy that I've been able to call him my friend for almost 25 years, and really excited that I get to have him on this show and maybe introduce him to some of you who maybe only listen to podcasts with WWE stars or TNA stars. Well, I want to introduce you to Tornado. And if you're familiar with the WWE in the last 30 years, then you've probably actually seen this guy too, because for a couple years, Tornado basically worked for the WWE almost weekly or bi-weekly, even though he wasn't under contract. He has done so much stuff. We'll be talking about that in our conversation as well. I could go on, but instead of me continuing to go on and gush about how awesome Tornado is, let's jump into this conversation. Part one of our two-parter with my friend and definitely, absolutely soon to be yours. Let's listen to this part one conversation with Tornado. So Tornado, you don't exist on the internet.
Absolutely not.
But now you do.
Well, you just don't know where I am.
You're in a, oh yeah. So I don't know where you are. And we also, even our listeners or viewers that are watching this on YouTube, don't know the secret location you are currently located right now.
That's right. I try and stay, as you know, I've known you for what, 20 some years. And
yes.
I've never had a what do you call it? A fingerprint on the internet.
Yes. I think that's freaking fascinating.
It wasn't done on purpose.
No.
Honestly, man, I just don't find I can't get into it. It just makes me angry, and I want to break stuff. So I just stay away from it, you know. It's not like a paranoid thing either. It's just kind of
yes.
I don't know. It just doesn't interest me at all, and I don't know. So do
you ever regret that? With just the way that the business is, or even not even wrestling business, just like life, how it seems like even every Joe Schmo job you have to have the frickin' a cell phone with the internet service and like something. Yeah. Even the frickin' I went to Walmart the other day and I went to ask like, oh, is this a sale price? And the cashier took out her personal cell phone, scanned my item in this app, and like was like going through her phone to tell me about it. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like that's ridiculous. So I don't know. Even if you're, a Walmart greeter, you need to have the internet.
Yeah, you know what? This weekend, here's a funny story. We were at me and fellow pro wrestler Jake O'Reilly and Asher Benjamin. The Venoms were out for dinner on the weekend.
Yeah.
And I walked right through the restaurant. I had no idea. I'm looking for the menu, and there was no menu. You had to scan it with your phone. And I don't have my phone. It's gone. It's in my back in the car, right? I don't bring it with me. I don't know. It doesn't, because I don't have it. So, and then to pay for parking, you needed to scan something with an app and this and that. So at this one place we were at, I wouldn't have been able to park properly, and I wouldn't have been able to order the meal because I know and it didn't even dawn on me. Like it's not even part of my existence, you know?
Yep. I know. I fought it for a long time for me, like within the context of the wrestling business when I signed my contract in 2009 and I was, a redneck, wrestling fan that was my love interest was on the television show and they brought me in as ODB's boyfriend.
Yep.
And then that was right when Twitter and everything was blowing up.
Yeah.
And like everybody was on it. and they were encouraging all the wrestlers to get on it, right? Everybody on the roster, and everybody was having YouTube and Twitter, and that was really the beginning of Twitter. And my logic at the time was, well, I'm a redneck. I wouldn't know how to use Twitter, so I'm not going to do it. So I didn't. And now I look at all the guys that got on that in 2009 and their followers and the reach that they have versus mine. And I'm like, damn it, I should have jumped on that earlier. However, I mean, that's the one regret of it. But then the other side of it is I was just starting a family. And if I would have had my nose in a freaking phone throughout the birth of my first child and then my second, and I just would have been, it's also runs the risk of being consuming. As you know, you see people on their freaking phones, right?
That's my biggest thing is that's why it's not even that, it's that I reject it. I'm like repulsed by it. You know what I mean? Like, and I see the people's faces like on it. In fact, you know, you can watch TV wrestling and see people in the front row not watching the match. They're on their phones. And they're not watching the match. And then, like, if I was the producer of the TV show, I'd run in there and like kick people out of the front row who are on their phones.
Yeah,
like, it really takes it down a notch, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it's people our age, who, well, I'm probably much older than you, but like even like
our generation
get really into it because we have no defense against it, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the people like the, you know, and not necessarily a wrestling kind of thing, but just people in my life who are my age or older who are on, let's say, Facebook or whatever it is today, they can't control themselves.
Yeah.
they have no defense. They have no idea what's going on.
I also think I wonder, as you're saying that, like, we have no defense for it. It's also interesting for guys from our generation where we would do something in the ring, do a promo or whatever, and the only feedback that we had was like in the crowd that day.
Yeah.
Right. And which is the feedback that I care about most. However, now you've got this added layer of feedback where the fans can then tell you their opinions online. Yeah. And that's a tempting thing to get feedback because that's what we are. Like we're athletes, we're showmen, we're whatever you want to say. But our whole existence requires a response. So if now we have this new added response that's tempting to go, oh, what are they thinking? So that our defenses are down from our generation, from guys that didn't have it before that now have that new response. I think some guys get addicted to that in an unhealthy way.
But the problem is when you get the negative response, then everybody gets all upset, right?
I know.
So if it's a double-edged sword, and so if you can't handle somebody saying that you suck, because my thing I always tell people is there's always somebody who hates the Beatles, right? There's always that guy who hates the freaking Beatles.
Yeah.
So they're up, and hey, man, good for you, right? So like I think if you can, and I see it as a tool. I understand that as a tool.
Yeah.
And I did miss out. You had asked me earlier if I felt like I missed out. Yeah, because like I think that's my biggest problem through the whole wrestling. You know, whether it was like, you know, trying to get a job with a major promotion or just is that I did zero self-promotion because I just so excited about the in-ring wrestling, like the athletics of it, that I didn't even have gear. I didn't even have a gimmick. It didn't even dawn on me. I just wanted to wrestle. Like I was just so excited to compete, and, you know, wrestle. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
You know? And so to this day, I talk to people like we just had some new belts done for Rock Solid Wrestling.
Yeah.
And I have no ideas. So I have to get people like, what's your ideas? So I go to somebody I know who's good at that and creative, and they help me out because there's no way I just sit there and do the same thing over and over again because I have no, like when it comes to colors or any self-promotion websites, all that stuff, it's not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is like you were saying earlier, going in, entertaining, wrestling, go 40 minutes. Everybody's booing me on the way out, and I've done my job. I'm happy now.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about what you just said. Maybe think of two things. For one, there's people listening to this that are thinking, and this is no offense to you, but also because you have no internet presence, people are going, who the hell is Tornado?
That's fine.
And and I really want them to know who Tornado is. So because I know you, like I said, we've known for 20 years. So I've heard like snippets of your story and your wrestling journey, and every time I'm just like sitting there like a freaking kid in a candy store waiting for you to throw out the candy cane of stories to me, going, oh my God, I love this story. So I think everybody's going to be fascinated by your story, because you're somebody who has, you know, is a quote unquote unknown to the mainstream, but within your territory of around here, everyone knows you. You're legendary. Everybody wants to wrestle you. You're going to hate that I'm saying this right now, but you're an Ontario indie legend. And so rightfully so, but you've also rubbed shoulders with and been in the ring with some of the greatest wrestlers of the last 40 years. And I'll teaser as to before we get into it, like you basically, you were wrestled for the WWE, WWF, but just didn't have a contract. And there's people there that thought you had a job.
Yeah.
So, well, right. So I want to jump into that, but before we do, we'll start. We'll kind of go linear, but you just said something about self-promotion, because this is Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. And I think there's like life advice within wrestling all the time.
Sure.
And one thing that stood out to me was you said, oh, we have new belts, for example, for Rock Solid Wrestling, and you don't have any ideas, so you just went out and got other people's ideas. That's good business 101, is surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than yourself, right? Because I think the mistake that so many people make is and I do this myself, and I know you do because we've talked about it, like we want to do everything ourselves because we're freaking control freaks. And like, it's our thing, right? Like, oh, this is my baby, I want to control it. But then we get to these moments where we go, you know what? I can't control this because this isn't my wheelhouse or my forte. So I have to outsource that. And that's so that's something that you've done well.
Like, some things are non-negotiable, because through my, like, I've been in the business for 27 years, 28 years, something like that.
Wow. Yeah, man.
In that time with Rock Solid, we've done a lot of, let's say, editing.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout having to film whatever we're filming and have the editing done and hiring people, and then they just didn't get pro wrestling. So guess who learned the editing program? Right here.
Yeah.
So it's old man snail's pace editing. But like, if people were coming, from, let's say, a movie industry and filming the wrestling and then trying to edit the wrestling, I wasn't getting what I wanted, because, I was maybe I'm too picky. Maybe I just have a vision that this is how I want it to be done. So I figured the only way to be fair was if I learned it, right? How to do it. And so I did. And then that's what we've been doing. And even the writing, certain things that we do, I entertain myself. I think, like, I'm a humor guy. I love humor. So if I'm entertained, then I think that's the way to go. And if what I find entertaining is not entertaining to some of the audience, then I just say, well, sorry, because there's certain rules where I have to, I have to take charge of, like, what I feel is entertaining.
Yeah.
If I think something's funny, I think it's funny, and it goes on, and if somebody gets offended by it, hey, man, I'm sorry, don't watch it, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I do reach out to people who, and I surround myself over the years, right? You meet, like, the best people of all time are in wrestling, in my opinion. Some people might have a different opinion, but I feel that they're the greatest people of all time.
Yes. I think, too, I find it interesting. Maybe you're not, as you're talking, I'm like, you don't give yourself enough credit, because, you could have just decided, well, I'm not learning that editing program because I'm old and it's not my thing. But then you decided, well, no, I'm just going to do it myself and I'm going to learn it. I did the same thing when I was started to, like, when I did want to have a little bit of an online presence, and I'm like, okay, I want to make this promo. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't want this promo that I'm going to do to just look like everybody else's. I should probably learn video editing. So I just taught myself video editing. Right. Yeah. And then it actually helped me get a job with Global Force Wrestling, which then got me a visa to the United States, like, about 8 years ago. Like, because I just like, oh, I got to make a video and I'm going to do it myself. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's also another life lesson in terms of, well, one, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, but then also that, they say you can't teach old dog new tricks. That's BS. That's not true. You can learn new tricks. And if you want to stay, I don't want to say relevant because that's overused, but if you just want to stay doing the thing that you love, I guess, because it's always evolving and changing, then learn a new trick.
Yeah.
You know, and you've done that.
Well, it's creative too, and I enjoy the creative process of anything. I'm a former musician as well. Like that was my first love before wrestling. Well, wrestling was always first. I just thought it was too small to wrestle, so I became a bass player. So like the creative process, recording, being in a recording studio, I really love that. And then it's kind of transformed over to the wrestling business as well, and into video now, not just audio, which is pretty cool. And I do love the creative process.
Let's start with what you just said, because I had that in my brain and I forgot about it. Let's start with your not first love, but one of your first loves in music.
Yeah, man.
Dude, like, tell us about that. I know you've played with some amazing people, and like that whole world of music is a crazy world. So what the heck? You just dropped that on the listeners going, wait a minute, you're a musician? Well, they have no idea just how high level and some of the stuff you were doing. So how'd that come to be?
I wouldn't say high level. I just say that
I would. You played with some pretty freaking famous people, dude. And I've jammed with you.
That's right. You're the bass player.
I'm the bass player in our band. We have a band, but we won't talk about that.
I can't wait to. That's where we're gonna give wrestling a break for a year. And we're gonna go on tour.
We're gonna go on tour. Exactly.
Let's do some ships. Let's a cruise ship band.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, man. So like right out of in high school, I guess I was like 14 or 15. And I think that what drew me to music too is that my oldest sister Tina brought me to see the Blues Brothers, and it blew my mind. Like that movie killed me. To this day, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And the music, like in learning later on who was in the bands that were recording the music was and just seeing that the visual, like the gimmick of the suits, and then this music that I've never heard before, you know, and just blew me away. And then getting into like Kiss and getting into and then hearing Stevie Ray Vaughan for the first time, it blew my freaking shorts. I couldn't believe what I was listening to.
Yeah.
So those influences all mixed together, and you know, I just thought about like, you know, and this is back in the day where you didn't get like. To this day, every time I go into a music store to this day, I always tell guys, you know, you couldn't go see a Fender guitar, a real Fender guitar when I was a kid, right?
Right, yeah.
Like you used to go in there and see like Blender guitars or whatever. So like to see a real Gibson or a real Fender, you had to go to Toronto to see that, or Montreal or something.
Yep.
So yeah, I got so you know, music was something too that I could control. It wasn't like because I was also an athlete, played hockey my whole life, played football, but you know, people could give you advice, whatever. Nobody in my world, like my dad, nobody had a musical background. So that was just me. I had control. So that's probably what was my attraction to that, was that nobody could say, hey, you know what, if you, you know, nobody could bust in there. This was mine. So luckily I had a friend of mine in high school, a guitar player, could play amazing. To this day, we get together when he comes home from, he lives in Calgary now. He comes back once in a while and we do the all-nighter. But nice. We clicked, man, and it was all just, you know, writing songs that we, you know, of course, the first songs you write sound like something you just listened to.
Yes.
You go through that phase. And then,
I played in high school. I'm right with you, because I played guitar, I played bass, and I played in bands. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Some people might not, but like, especially when you find someone that you click with. I was like that with my brother. We would play for hours on the same wavelength with each other the whole time. It's really cool. Yeah. But I feel you.
Oh yeah, man. So anyways, so we put a couple of bands together, usually a 3-piece blues, like a blues, because the guy could play guitar, man, I'm telling you. Yeah. So it was like a heavy guitar influence stuff. And I play harmonica as well. So I had like my bass, and then I had the harmonica strap. So I do some stuff like that. But we wrote all our stuff, which was interesting. So even when we played clubs and toured, and I think that's where the whole, by the way, the wrestling to the like the whole work ethic kind of thing.
Yes.
Like I was 16 and we're like lying about our age, getting rides, you know, booking rides, getting rides to like another town to play, because we were playing at a bar that night and none of us could drive, you know.
Yeah.
So like, it was just like this time in my life where it was just like, you know, you had to make it, or nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the whole love of actually being on the road came from. And then it kind of transferred over to wrestling beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so we played our asses off. Like you know, we were at one point like a house band too at a club in town.
Yeah.
So we played every 2 weeks. We were the house band, and then, you know, so we always had this steady gig, and then we just traveled and played and recorded. Went to Toronto, recorded maybe 4 or 5 songs, did a whole bunch of stuff. But the one thing was we opened for here's my life story. My first life
story. I love this.
So we opened for a guy named Ronnie Hawkins, okay, who's famous in Canada and famous for getting other people started in music, and probably to his own detriment, you know, put other people's careers in front of his own. So, and I think I kind of do that as well.
I was about to say the same thing. I go, you learned a lot from your mentor, because yeah, man.
I wouldn't say mentor. He was just a great guy who.
Cool.
So we ended up opening for him, and we did like a three night stay, and he would say, "Hey man, like, you know, did you write? Like, I don't recognize these songs." So we said, "Oh yeah, you know, we write these songs, blah blah blah," and then so he's like, "Yeah, come up to my like where we were staying at this place to play." So we went to his room and, you know, brought harmonicas and guitars and whatever, and we entertained everybody all night. So I get back.
How old are you at this time, Paul? Like, when you're doing this? Like,
I wasn't married, so I'd say 18 maybe at this point.
Wow. Okay. You're okay. That's
so.
Just trying to visually picture 18-year-old tornado going.
I look just like this. I look just like this. Okay, my kindergarten picture. There's this.
Yeah, you have Arn Anderson syndrome. You always look the same age.
That's right. So
so you're in his room playing, entertaining them.
Entertaining them all night. Blah blah blah. He's like, "Give me your number, man. You know, I enjoyed you guys, whatever." So. Sure enough, gave him my number, and then one day I'm outside. I think I'm playing catch with my nephew and playing football on the street. My mom's like, I still lived at home, for Christ's sake.
Right, yeah.
And my mom goes, "Mike, Ronnie Hawkins is on the phone for you." I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
So I get on the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, you know, we're thinking of doing a tour. With a bunch of different acts, and we'd like your band to be part of it, but you have to come down and audition, right?" So we pack up the car, whatever. The 3 of us drive down. At that time, it was Lakefield, Ontario, is where his beautiful house was.
Okay.
So we get down there, and it was kind of like American Idol before it was American Idol. There's like all these people in a living room, and then us idiots standing there playing. Right. So we played. And he loved everything. He's like, "Yeah, great job. Everything's great. And we'll give you a call." So come back to Sudbury, get everything together. And then we get a call, and he says, "Let's go. We're ready to roll. You guys are on." I said, "Hey, this is it, right? This is our chance."
Yeah.
And at that moment, the guy who was my partner in crime my entire life, but was also the band. Like, it was, he could sing and he could play guitar. I was in the background doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
He got cold feet and decided that there's no way he could go and pursue this. And I was just shocked, because like, it was like, oh my God, like the first time in my life I ever got like, not railroaded, but just like the feeling of like, everything I thought up to this moment was wrong. Like, I was wrong the whole time, you know, and I just thought we were on the same wavelength, and we were totally not on the same wavelength. So I had to call Ronnie and say, "Hey man, we can't do it." Because like, it's not like I could go get another drummer or something, right?
Yes.
Like, yes. He was the band. Like,
yeah.
And guitar player. So sure. And that's another thing I think that got me, like, when wrestling became an actual, like, something that I thought, wow, I can do this, right?
Yep.
Was if this went tits up, it was my fault. I didn't want anybody to be responsible for me.
Yes.
I didn't want to be in the, like, if I'm in a car crash, I'm driving the car.
Yeah. I mean? Yeah. That stood out to me. That stands out to me too. Because that's one. Because the correlation. There's a lot of correlation between music and wrestling. However, the big difference is, wrestling, you are in control because you only have to control yourself, and it's all on you. Because I was in, and so when I was 18, and I'm like, okay, I got trained to be a wrestler. I was also playing in bands, and guys in my bands were wanting to get the gigs and hit the road. But there's always those couple finicky guys in the band that are like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to go this weekend." And it's like, well, so then you're trying to manage all these people. Whereas when you're wrestling, you're like, nope. You just find your people and go, hey, we're all going to the show. Okay, let's hop in together, and then you just go. And then you succeed or fail based on yourself, not on anybody else. So that's huge. The other thing that stood out to me is a lot of people think that fear of failure stops people, but even more so a lot of times it's the fear of success.
Yeah.
Which is what your buddy got cold feet. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like it's probably like not, oh man, what if I suck? It's, oh my God, what's my life going to look like on the road with this rock band? Like what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, I think that some people self-sabotage themselves because of that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's the fear of success actually
yes,
is how I put it. You know,
yeah.
A lot of times. I mean, you see it in wrestling all the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, which was like way back when we were doing a bunch of dark matches and stuff for the Fed. And
yeah.
They come and go, who wants to do this? And it was like, whoop, my hand would go up all the time. And then other people just like, whoop, heads down. Right? Like I just always tried to volunteer all the time to do the stupidest things. That's part of learning, right? You know?
Absolutely. So we sidetracked there, but I think we needed to do that. No, I had us do that. But to come back, you were telling us that you call up Ron, you're like, hey man, like, I guess we're not doing this.
So then he says, do you play the saxophone? And I go, yeah, I play the saxophone. And he goes, because we're putting together a horn section, right? So there's going to be some horns here.
Okay.
If you want, you can come down and do that. I'm like, yes, I do. So I'm like, fuck. And of course, you couldn't buy a saxophone in Sudbury.
So we need to pause because I know this part of the story, but just so our listeners know, you don't play the fucking saxophone.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Right.
All right, we're going to take a quick break from our conversation to have another conversation with a very special person in my life. I'll let her introduce herself. What is your name?
I'm Eden, and I'm 5 years old, and I'm going to be the boss of this video.
Oh, you're going to be the boss? Well, it's not a video. They're just listening to us, so it's like it's an audio thing. But they're going to hear this. It's on a podcast. Are you the boss?
Yes.
Well, boss, I do need to let you know as your, I guess, employee.
No speaking.
What? I don't even get to
quiet.
I don't even get to talk?
I'm supposed to be speaking this thing.
Okay, so.
We are going to be talking about /ConyDino.com.
Wow, okay. It's not what
quiet.
Okay. It's not what we're going to be talking
about wrestling competition right now. And this is going to be like a weird thing, but I'm only 5 years old, and I'm the boss, and I'm a principal. I have a job that's making things go fun.
Oh, your job's making things go fun?
Yep.
Well, can you tell them about one fun thing?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So one fun thing is what did you do today?
Wait. Shh.
Oh, but I tricked you. It was working for a second.
I had to say that this may be weird in this conversation, but I have a crush on somebody at school.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that. You have a crush on someone at school?
Yeah, but it's not Luke.
It's not?
No.
Are you sure you want to be talking about this? A lot of people are going to be listening to this. Like a lot of people all around the world. Are you sure you're okay with them hearing about your crush?
Well, I don't have a crush.
Oh, you don't have a crush?
No.
Okay.
It was a joke.
Oh, that was a joke. Oh, thank goodness. Oh, you made your dad nervous. I thought you were going to tell everybody that in the world you had a crush on a boy named Luke.
I don't have a crush on Luke.
Okay, that's good.
I don't have a crush on anybody.
Whew, that makes my life a lot easier. I'm glad that's true.
Elsa, you're not supposed to be speaking as I am. I'm the boss. And
can you tell me about ceofit.ca? That's a website.
Oh, right.
What did I just say? Did I say ceofit.ca? Can you say that?
Don't say A.
Nope. We'll do it in sections. Say CEO.
CEO
fit.ca.
Fit.ca.
That's a sponsor. They're the people that's helping me bring this website to people. So we want to tell everybody about ceofit.ca. We don't want to just shush in the microphone the whole time. Do you even know what ceofit.ca is, boss?
Yeah.
What is it?
What
can you get on ceofit.ca? I'll let you guess.
You can make things be better.
Oh, you're right. You can make things be better. Do you know what things? I'll give you a hint. I'll point at right now. What's that?
Strong.
Yeah. It can make your muscles and your body better. They give you supplements that help you stay strong. That's what you do. Supplements. And also, also can make better. They have things for a certain type of function that helps your
brain.
Yes, brain function. So they got stuff to help you have a healthy brain and healthy muscles. What's this place called again?
C.ca.
Close. You missed a bunch of letters though. CEO.
CEO.ca.
Close. You missed a word. ceofit.ca. You try it.
ceofit.ca.
That's right. Okay. Well, you're the boss now. You tell them about ceofit.ca. Now that you know what it is, you tell them all about it.
So, people get better and make things get stronger and help your brain get better.
That's right.
And people that are sick, it helps them get better.
Oh, it does. I didn't know that. Well, I guess if they're feeling sick in their brain and they're not feeling healthy or motivated, you know what helps you feel better? If you're feeling negative, I actually talk to students about this when I go around and do my speaking. I tell them that positive motion creates positive emotion. So if you're feeling sad, one thing you can do to make yourself feel happy? Move. Do exercises. And the stuff at ceofit.ca helps you do your exercises. You know what's a cool thing about ceofit.ca? They're based in the country of Canada.
I know.
Where are we right now?
I know. We're at
what country?
Canada.
Yes, we are. We're in Canada.
And Canada.
That's right. That's the town we live in. I'm going to edit that out, though, because I don't want people to know the town we live in. Or we're going to have people show up at our house. I don't want them to know.
You will?
We could. There's a lot of fans listening to this. I don't want them to know exactly where we live.
Well,
I love my fans, but I don't want my fans showing up at our front door.
I do.
You do? Well, don't say the name of our town again, then.
Town name is Canada.
Oh, no.
Canada.
Oh, no. I'm going to have to edit that out.
No.
Oh, okay.
You guys can come to our house every day if you like.
I don't want wrestling fans to show up at my house. Like
They
I said,
will
well,
come.
Maybe if they come, they can bring you a present.
Please come. Please come. Give me a present.
Okay, yeah. You got to bring a present if you're going to come to our house.
Yes.
You got to bring Eden a present.
Or if you don't bring a present, you're fired and get out of the house right away.
Oh, wow. The boss you're the boss. You just fired all my listeners. That was not what I was expecting from this conversation. Can you say bye to the listeners now, boss?
Bye!
Oh, wow. Can you say that one time where you're not yelling, or?
Bye!
Okay, you can. I guess you are yelling it. You just hurt the ears of all of the listeners that are working out and have headphones on. You just made their eardrums go, whoa. Oh, well. Say bye one more time. Maybe don't yell. Can you sing a goodbye?
Bye!
That was beautiful. Bye, Eden.
Bye!
Which is similar to what you just said. Hey, can somebody do this? You put your hand up, go, yeah, I can do that. This is the musical equivalent. Do you play the saxophone? Yes, I do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So I go down to Toronto, buy a saxophone and a how to play the saxophone book. Come back, whatever, mess around with it. And then I go down. And I swear to God, when I drove down, it was the most freaking the scaredest. Scaredest, is that a word?
Yeah.
I was so
yeah.
I was so nervous. I had to pull over to every bathroom that I could find because I was literally crapping my pants. Wow. That's how scared I was. Like, first time, like, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no clue. And
like, literally not just like, don't know what I'm doing because I don't know what life's going to look like. Like, I literally don't know what I'm doing because I'm going to play in a band with this instrument that I've never played other than
a real band. Like, this is a real band.
Yeah. Like a traveling real rock band or blues band or yeah, dude. Oh, amazing. Okay.
So after 1,000 craps, luckily at one of these truck stops, there was a cassette tape. That's how old this is. And Kiss Alive 1. And which was one of my favorite records. And I put that thing in the tape player, and it just calmed me down. I listened to it over and over and over, and all the way down to where I was going. And then by the time I got there, I remember I got lost 1,000 times. I got like just driving all over the place. Right? I have no idea where I'm going. Finally get to the place, and there it was. Now I'm at this point where it's like, which happened again with wrestling, but it was like, okay, now it's up to me. Is this going to work somehow? Or not only is this going to work, but what can I get out of it personally and like for my life, you know, and I didn't want to disappoint. Like my wife now, my girlfriend back then, she was in teachers college. I figured she was going to leave me anyways, because like, who the hell wants to marry me? You know what I mean? But luckily everything worked out. But anyways, or she lost the bet or something.
Yeah.
But we've been together like married 30 years.
That's amazing,
for like
man.
35 years. Yeah.
Oh, dude.
So pretty awesome there. But so I get down, and sure enough, you know, we started working. So I had a guy, his name was Bert Hermitson. He's a sax player. I think he passed now, but he was he played with the band. I believe he was with Robbie Lane and the Disciples. I think they had a couple of hits in like the 50s. But he was like the guy. I think you'd see him on all like if there's the Junos and they have the band that plays in the Junos, and he was always like playing sax in that. Yeah. So he led me through everything, and really didn't figure out that I didn't know what I was doing, because I was just, the only time I would get outed, I think, is if somebody was sick and they're like, okay, Mark, you're gonna have to play these parts. Then I would have been screwed. But I learned all it was bop, 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 bop,
yeah,
whatever, right?
So you just learned your parts.
Yeah,
yes,
by ear too. So
oh wow, by ear.
And now nothing really left, because like the whole thing kind of kiboshed. But Ronnie was a gentleman. He had me living at his house. I lived with him. Wow. And then I'd do chores around, because he had this huge estate. So I'd drive a tractor and cut all his grass, and there was a guy working there who'd stay there. So I'd like help him cut wood for this place, and just do whatever I could to pay off my being there at all.
Sure.
And then as far as like rehearsals happened, whatever, but we never, I think I might have played only 4 shows with them, and that was it. The whole thing went. So I went for, and what was funny is that to play with them, I needed a tuxedo, right? So you had like a tuxedo.
Wow. Okay.
With the Hawks t-shirt underneath.
Yeah.
And then I'd, you know, so we go to the show, bop, 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 and I'm wearing a tuxedo. I didn't have a dime.
Yeah.
Right? But I had a tuxedo. I looked great, but I couldn't even buy a freaking, like at the end of this whole thing, which maybe lasted 6 to 8 months.
Wow. Okay.
I was like living in my car.
Yep.
Eating, you know, pasta out of a can. And then trying to go to shows here and there. I went back to Sudbury, got my bass rig, and came back to play with other bands, just pickup bands who needed a bass player this night or that night. So I did that too, just playing. I opened for Loverboy, you know, doing all this crazy stuff. But this whole time, like I got, like you're saying about people you meet. So I met like Edgar Winters, and I met Jeff Healy, and like all types of people, man. It was a really cool time. Really cool time.
Yeah. So
what I learned though was just
that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, what'd you learn? Yeah.
Well, I just learned that if I had some confidence of me personally, I could walk into an area where I'm not really an expert at, right? Whatever that means.
Yeah.
And it was an honest thing. I love music. I could, and I felt like I could do anything. I can do anything. Like, you know, do you play saxophone? Hell yeah. Right. And so sure enough, I'll tell you one story though. He's got a son. Ronnie's got a son, Robin, who's a phenomenal guitar player, and I think he was the only guy who figured it out that I didn't know what I was doing, because like everybody was on, you know, song number 10, and I was still on page 1 because I never turned the music right.
Ah,
and he's
right.
like, hey, what's going on there? I'm like, oh, nothing, you know. So like, it's just all I had it in memory. And what's funny too is that by the time this whole little spot was finished, I knew the guitar parts, the bass lines. I could play all the different instruments because I was just like kind of bored too, right? Because like the life of a musician was like hurry up and wait, kind of like being in a movie, right? Like where you're just sitting on your hands and there's a lot of waiting, wait. So I just grabbed the guitar, learned all the entire set on guitar, learned the entire set on bass, you know?
Yeah. So not only do you learn like multiple skills, but I think it's really important. I learned this early in the wrestling career. Like I learned my first weekend on the road wrestling, I learned that I love the road. So that you must have learned that at 18 as this musical vagrant, just traveling around, right? Like that's a huge
from 16.
Oh yeah, wow. So that's such an important thing to learn, because a lot of guys do all this like pre-training and then they learn how to wrestle and then they do their first weekend on the road and go, oh my God, I hated that. Like I like the 10 minutes in the ring, but I hated everything else around it. Whereas I loved every single aspect of it. So you already learned that at 16. Traveling around with these musicians. For sure. Yeah.
But anything, the whole thing lasted, like I said, 6 to 8 months around there. So I went from like, you know, to extreme poverty. I was actually, like I said, living in my car. And then the tour that was supposed to happen didn't happen. So, you know, I literally played maybe four shows with the guy, and that was it. But so I came back home, and then I formed another band, which when you were saying about all the different people, it was so I fell in love with the horns, right? So I started a band with a horn section. So we were doing the Blues Brothers style music, and then also writing songs. And so we recorded, I think it was like a 6 or 7 song like EP thing.
Yeah.
And shopped it to a bunch of record labels, and everything was going great. And then I guess the next thing that kind of changed everything was my dad passed away, and then that kind of made me think, time is short, right?
Yep.
And so I've always wanted to try wrestling, but I always thought I was way too small. So this whole time I'm doing music, by the way, I was an athlete my entire life. So, you know, it started in the spring. You'd go to school. So I played football, spring, then hockey, and then I, you know, wrestle, track and field. And then I played like a summer football league as well. And then I just did it, you know, and then it all started over again. So it's like sports.
Yeah.
But wrestling was a big part of my childhood, and but I just thought it was too small. Like that's it, because like I'd go to it was International Wrestling out of Montreal was the one that I used to see, and so you'd see the Road Warriors, you'd see Rick Martel, and I'm like, there's no way I'm not that size, right?
Yeah.
So I just figured, no, it ain't happening. But then I ran into there was an indie show that came to Sudbury, and I ran into one of the wrestlers, and I was like, I'm freaking 2 inches taller than you, man, you know, and then. So we started talking, and then he's like, well, you know, because I could do, and because of my athletic background, I could do flips and all that stuff. And I just taught myself, you know, in the backyard type thing, whatever. Yeah. And then, so he's like, yeah, you got to go to this wrestling school. He goes, you'll fit in perfectly. You're bigger than everybody, and you can do stuff like athletically or agility wise, you know? Sure. And so that's what I did. I just luckily my wife is awesome, and she's like, well, you know, go do it. So I quit my job. I did literally quit my job, and I immersed myself in learning about wrestling, which is what Ronnie taught me too. It was that the one thing he always said is like, you can't be if you want to be a country singer, you have to go to Nashville. You cannot be a country singer in your basement, right? Yep. I guess today you could technically because of the internet. Yeah. Back then it didn't exist. And you just, and it made sense, right? Like you have to immerse yourself in it, or else you're just a part timer. And like there's always going to be the part timer who makes it, right? There's always the exception to the rule, but they're the exception. Yeah, you know. Yeah. So like if you want to really have a chance, you have to immerse yourself, and that's what I did. So I literally quit everything, moved to the wrestling school. Yes, and which was where? Which was in Cambridge. Which was in Cambridge. Yes. Yeah. There's That's a movie. That one. Oh well, that's you know.
So that's there's so many things that
we should do a documentary on that school.
Oh my God, people have no idea. But also one of the interesting thing is all of the good, amazing wrestlers that came out of that.
Oh my God,
awful experience, but they kind of that awful, carny experience at that wrestling school kind of led to some amazing things and some great careers.
For sure. I would say the main reason that worked out for a lot of people is you lived at the school. So we trained all the time.
Right.
So my own story is I got there and we had, at the time, Joe Legend was training people. Like, does it get any better than that?
Yeah.
And then after he left, Carl LeDuc came in. Literally the day after Joe left, Carl came in. And, the training was out of this world, but you had to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because when I didn't even know what the word meant, but when I got worked into this thing, the guy I met the carney I met who talked me into everything and got half my money, not all of it.
Mm-hmm. Good for you.
There's supposed to be like meal plans, exercising, all this stuff, right? We have a chef.
Such a work. Oh my God, yeah. We have chef services.
There's no internet, right? Like, there's not like you can go and source anything. It was just like meeting. Well, there was a website, there's no doubt, but it was just like he made it himself, right? There's no comments or people aren't going, hey, don't go to this guy, he's a scam artist or whatever, right?
Right.
And but you know what? God bless the scam artist because he gave me something that I loved it to death. But I remember going down to the school. My wife came with me, and we went to the school. And I walked in, and I saw the ring. It's just like, done. I'm sold. Like, just there it is. Like it exists. Like something I only saw as a kid, and on one side of the guardrail. There it is. I'm on the other side of the guardrail. I'm looking at this, just at the ring itself. I was just like, oh my God, this is freaking awesome.
Yes.
And the beauty of wrestling too is you can be a rock star and an actor and an athlete, and you can do it all, And so it kind of, for me, creatively and luckily, like I said, I was athletic, so it wasn't like I'm coming into this left field. Like this was right down my alley. I just sold myself too short to think that I could ever be able to do this. And then, but I'm not afraid to put the work in either. So that was the other thing too. So I literally quit everything, all this stuff. Like I said, I moved down there and I lived at the school, and in 2 months I was hitting the road. That was it.
Wow. And you had full support from your wife?
Yeah, 100%.
Was she, did she go back to Sudbury?
Yeah.
Oh, so you were in Cambridge, immersing yourself, living there while she's back in Cambridge. Oh man, you found a good one, brother.
Yeah, man. I used to drive home every weekend type thing once in a while.
And how long of a drive is that? Because people that don't know their Canadian geography,
5 hours.
5 hour drive you went and lived away, which is, man, is like a lifetime away in some ways, but also not, because some people are like 5 hours, but as Canadians are like, especially you being in Sudbury, you got to drive 5 hours to get anywhere.
That's right. For sure.
So okay, so you go home on the weekends, you'd see the wife, and then you just so you only train for like I didn't remember that part of the story, like 2 months, and then all of a sudden you're just doing it.
I'm just doing it. It was just it came so easy to me. I just because I've been watching it my whole life, and the timing and that thing, it was just but in a way, it was not easy, but it came naturally. But then the other part that I didn't know is I wasn't a mark. I had no idea what was going on. So even my first match, which was against a guy, like an older guy from the school, I had no idea what I was doing, and they never really smartened me up. So I literally.
You had your first match, and you weren't smart yet?
No, not really.
Oh my God!
I could do everything though. I could do everything. Right. But I just really wasn't I didn't really get how it was put together.
Yes.
And then, and then I just learned. And
so what was that first match like then? Did he talk to you before, or was it all just in the ring?
He had heat with the owner of the school, and so he wasn't going to wrestle at all. I'm like, no, you got to wrestle me. Yeah. So we were in Cambridge, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm going to take a flip bump in this Tim Hortons parking lot, and if I do it, you're wrestling that show. He goes, fine. So I did a flip bump in the parking lot.
Yes.
Like, okay, I'll be there, I guess. But yeah, so but I'm glad it worked that way, because there like a respect I had for it that like of fear. Okay, like
yes.
fear is a very good motivator, and to throw yourself into a situation where it just might not, and I'm sure you've done this. I think we've done this wrestling each other. Actually, it's like sometimes we go in there with a couple of weird ideas or something that we're not sure if it's going to work out or not. Luckily, we've been around long enough that if something isn't working, we can take a U-turn and start over again.
Yes,
but fear is quite the motivator, to succeed and on your feet, like in real time, right?
Yes.
Like there's no time to adjust.
Yeah. Fear separates the people that are going to succeed from the people that are going to fail. Like as soon as you get into that situation, I remember talking to somebody. It was my first WWE appearance, and I was on television. I'm standing behind the curtain. Kurt Angle's standing in the middle of the ring, waiting for me to come down. I look to my right. Vince McMahon is sitting at Gorilla, directly to my right. Yeah. I look up to see the monitor that he's like. There's a monitor behind him, and then he's looking at. Kurt Angle's cutting a promo about the guy who's about to come down to the ring, which is me, which is going to be seen by 4 million people on television. And like, I'm about to walk through that curtain, and not only are 4 million people going to watch me get beat up by Kurt Angle, but Vince McMahon, the most powerful guy in wrestling, is sitting right there. That moment when people are like, what was happening? Well, yes, I was afraid and shitting my pants. However, I was so freaking pumped and excited, and the conversation happening in my brain was, you're going to go freaking rock this, and you're going to kill this, and you're going to show them. And like, it motivated me. I was so pumped about it. Where some guys that separates them and they go, oh my God, they cramp up. They go under a rock. They like shit the bed, so to speak. Yeah. That I was the opposite. I thrived. And it was a huge thing for me to learn that no, those pressure situations, I step up to those and thrive on those. Yeah. And that's what separates a lot of people and their success and failure in whatever industry that they're in, wrestling being a very unique one.
For sure.
But that's another important lesson for you to learn early, is that you thrive under fearful situations.
For sure. And it's like, doing public speaking like you do, or any kind of a business.
Yes.
It's not a wrestling thing alone. It's anything that takes you out of the box and makes you have to say, it's on me right now. So whatever happens here, it's up to me.
Yeah.
And, I think you've had some experience in movies as well. I've done a few things, and I've had feelings where I don't belong. Right. Right. I'm not an actor. I don't put the time in that I put into wrestling or I did with music or anything. But I just got some weird thing. Next thing you know, I'm playing a character in a movie, and I'm sitting in a car being driven, and this guy named Wallace Shawn, who's like, you've seen him in everything. He's in with Andre the Giant there. What is that?
The Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. Yeah, he's
wow.
my giant. That guy.
So wow!
I don't know anything. I didn't even read the freaking movie. I have no idea, and I'm just sitting there. Right, and he sits next to me. I'm like, what the hell? I don't belong here.
Yes.
So I had like a 2-minute freaking, timer. I'm like, I got myself. I'm buried now because now I got to do something. I'm not an actor. I have no idea.
Okay, we have to take a quick detour from this wrestling because we need to touch on this because people are listening to you just say this and go, wait a minute. This traveling rock star wrestler is also like an actor / stuntman. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. So let's just take a quick detour and how the hell did that happen in terms of getting into movies?
Well, it was just, knowing people and saying, and meeting people and you know what, like the wrestling business brought me to this because like people came to the shows and said, hey, you're doing, and a lot of it was like a lot of the charity work that we do would bring people in and say, hey, wow, that's great. What else do you do? What else do you do? And then all of a sudden my phone rings with a cord still, and it's on the wall, by the way.
Yeah.
And the phone rings and it's like, hey, we need a guy who looks like you. Right.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is stand there. I'm like, okay, sure. So and then I do that. And then they call me back. Hey, can you get thrown through a window? Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Come on down. So I go down and do that. And then it just kind of compounded and compounded. I haven't done anything since lockdowns and all that.
Yes.
But at the time, it was just things kept flowing and flowing. There was a guy who had a stunt crew that we got along with really well. And so I just, every time he needed me, I went. Yeah. I have no agent. I have nothing. I did everything myself.
Hell yeah. Oh, I love it.
That's it. And then if I could do it, I'd do it. If I couldn't do it, I'd say no. And they go, "You're saying no?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm not going to lie to you and say I can be there and I can't, right?
Sure.
So I didn't take everything, but like I did, I did a bunch of stuff. And it was just the other thing too is like anything I earned doing that went right into the wrestling business, right? Yeah. Everything got funneled in. So I looked at that kind of thing as being funding the company and
cool. Yeah, as part of it, it's almost like an investment into Rock Solid Wrestling and what you're
However, with the other thing I learned, and doing dark matches as well, as you know, is you see where the cameras are placed, you see the way things move, and I really, really love that creative process. So even being in a, backstage at a Raw or SmackDown and everything's like, craziness because it's live, and then you go to a movie where you're sitting in a trailer for freaking 5 hours to come out and do your one line, and then so like, through all that, you kind of find what turns you on about each of those experiences,
Absolutely. So getting back onto the wrestling, so you hit the road. What's one main lesson, or maybe not even lesson, just like experience or lesson from kind of working the indies before your first big break? Like, what main thing did you maybe learn about yourself through that experience of that travel and struggle on the indie scene?
I'd say it's plateaus. I think you start wrestling, and then the majority of people wrestle someone they went to a wrestling school with.
Yes.
Because you kind of get booked as a duo or as a match. And then once you leave that, and that's a plateau there. So you're going out in front of people, and you're not acknowledging the crowd. You're just making sure. This is what I did anyways. I'm not saying other people do this, but I didn't acknowledge anyone. And I just wrestled and went like a robot, right? And then once I got comfortable, then I hit a plateau. And it's like, okay, well, now I can move on to acknowledging the crowd, feeding off the crowd. And then now I'm wrestling a guy who doesn't speak English. So now I got to, he's not my friend. I don't know this guy at all.
We are going to end it right now, right here, right now, for part one with Tornado. Didn't I tell you Tornado's awesome? Like, if you didn't know who this guy was before this conversation that you just listened to, you now want to know more, don't you? Because he's fascinating. He's so cool. He's so awesome. He's my friend. Now he's yours. This is Tornado. And we're going to stop it right here mid-conversation so that we can leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger so that you will join us for part two to learn more about Tornado's wild and wacky life and some of the lessons that he's learned along the way as he joins me here for this project known as Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. Thank you for joining us for another week. If you don't want to wait until next week, you're like, I want to hear the rest of this conversation with Tornado right now. Well, why don't you go and do that? Why don't you go to patreon.com/Cody Deaner and watch the entire full conversation? Or download the audio that's over on patreon.com/Cody Deaner, and you can listen to that whole conversation right now. I got free trials over there. You want to go just start a trial? You want to test it out? Listen to some bonus stories that is only exclusive to some of my patrons. I got a bonus story with every single one of my past guests. So why don't you go do a trial offer over on patreon.com, sign up for a free trial, go on over there, listen to all the bonus stories, listen to the rest of this Tornado conversation, and then you'll be hooked. And then you'll be a supporter each and every month for me over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner.
Other ways you can support me is by supporting my sponsor. Go to restwhendead.ca or at restwhendead clothing on Instagram. Check out this awesome, wicked, awesome company that's been with me from almost day one. They hopped on early, and now they're just one of my biggest supporters. And I love my Rest When Dead and my restwhendead.ca. I love the Rest When Dead family. I'm proud to be a part of that family, along with TNA star Crazy Steve and TNA star Jody Threat. You can also check me out on prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner. Get yourself a Wrestling is Life is Wrestling t-shirt. Go to cameo.com and get yourself a cameo with me for a special occasion for yourself or a loved one. Or you want to book me on your show. Are you a promoter? You want to tell a promoter about me and say, hey, you got to book Cody. This guy's awesome. Well, thank you for calling me awesome. I appreciate that. And bring me to your show. Go to book Cody at CodyDeaner.com. I'm taking independent bookings right now through to the end of 2024. If you want to bring me to your school or youth event because you hear me talking on this podcast or in the intro, or you've heard and you follow me on my social media and my speaking account, I got a whole other life as a professional speaker that some people aren't aware of. Because yes, I'm a professional wrestler, but I'm also a speaker. I started speaking almost a decade ago, and I fell in love with it. I'm going to be doing it for as long as humanly possible. No matter where my wrestling career takes me, I will be a speaker because I get so much out of it. I love speaking to kids. I love speaking to youth, and I would love to speak to youth at your school or at your event. Go to chrisgrayspeaks.com. That's Gray with an A, chrisgrayspeaks.com. You can learn all about my programs and how you can bring me to your school or event this year. That's going to do it for another episode. If this is your first time listening to Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, thank you. Leave me a comment on your socials and tag me at Cody Deaner on your socials and let me know what you thought of the show. Please consider reviewing, and subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Just rate, review, subscribe. Let me know what you're thinking. It helps the algorithm and helps more people find out about this awesome show that I'm doing. I appreciate you jumping on board and hope you will join us again next week with part 2 with Tornado, because you will continue to learn. If you join me in this journey, you will learn each and every week with all of my guests, including next week for part 2 with Tornado, that when we listen to these life stories from these awesome friends of mine, we learn one thing: wrestling is life is wrestling. We'll see you next week, guys.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life is wrestling.